This is episode 177 of Zen and the Art of Real Estate Investing with my guest, Grant Shipman. Grant is the founder of Livingsmith, and his journey through co-living spans 2.5 decades, including experiences in communes, co-ops, and intentional living spaces. He's been doing co-living with Livingsmith since 2017. Grant, welcome to the show.
I'm really stoked to be here. I've been looking forward to this, Jonathan. That's rad. Right.
Yeah, me too. And I want to start with a couple things to kind of help people understand, because I don't think everybody really gets co-living. And I know that's part of your journey, but let's start with intentional living. What is intentional living to you? And what does that mean in the concept of what you're doing?
Yeah. So the intentional living community or the tradition, it's really, it's been around for hundreds of years everywhere. So I didn't stumble upon them until I got married young and I came home, and after 9 months, instead of finding my wife at home, I had a letter that she had left, and I really only saw her ever. It's kind of a mystery. I don't know if there was mental illness, but I still wanted to hold off on, so many months to like have that marriage heal, but I wanted people to live with. I couldn't sign a lease with others. So I moved in with a bunch of really amazing hippies. And what I learned, holy cow, I've been part of the Foundation for Intentional Living since then. And it's this entire thing of people who they're not living together because they have to, right? They didn't just move out of a treatment center. They're not right. For us. They would get their own spot. These people, they love living together. Sometimes they share equity in houses. Sometimes they don't. Sometimes it's a neighborhood. I mean, it looks all kinds of ways. I moved in with these people and none of them were vegetarians, but they had a vegetarian kitchen and a massive organic garden. And it was downtown Austin. It was, and so to say, I came upon these people and they really, they're the OGs of strangers living together. And I discovered these jewels. Like, for instance, I came home and none of these people were my best friends. That's not what family is, but this non-traditional household where I come home and it's like, hey, there's people who there's mutual respect and care, and being part of that kind of a household, a healthy household. I don't know if there's anything more valuable in the world.
So yeah, in some ways, it reminds me a little bit of the sober living paradox now, although there's obviously a different choice to live there and why people go. But that's also, that is a form of co-living, but not the same dynamic, of course.
Yeah. And I like you bring that out. We actually have, we were doing co-living for quite a while. And the house that I owned was a sober living house. We didn't manage it, but it was an Oxford house for people who are familiar with that.
Yeah.
Oxford, they contacted me and they said, hey, Oxford is going to shut down our house. Is going to end our chapter or our charter. And I was like, well, I go, I have a co-living property management company. So I got together. It was a women's sober living house anyway. Now we manage sober living houses. It is similar. It's just when we talk about definitions, we'll put that into transitional housing, because you usually only want to live in a sober living house as long as it's helpful for you. Where a co-living house, you could live for decades.
Yeah.
But this is what's great. Someone's like, oh man, I lived in a sober living house and it was so great. I wish that was for mainstream people or people in student housing. They're like, oh man, I wish I could be in student housing without all the partying, because I'm not into that anymore.
And also so say they rent a room in a nice 3-bedroom house with a nice kitchen, they're going to pay way less for that room than they would pay for usually like a studio that's a standalone for themselves. So it's a break for the renter too, as we live in an affordable housing crisis of times where there's not a lot of, inventory. And people always have like a bad spin on investors, but this is something that to me looks like a win-win. Investors are going to do okay. The people who are renting there in this intentional living situation and co-living are getting an opportunity to spend less and build more community. it really makes sense to me. And I do think it's something that the future holds a lot more scale for it.
Do you, yeah, you're seeing like all of the things that I just always nerd out on. Do you know, the most popular lease is, like like the lease that is highest in demand for residential real estate right now, as far as like, is it, is it a lease for 3 people? Is it a lease that 5 people sign on? Is it a lease that, that kind of thing?
No, no idea, but I bet you're going to tell me.
Oh man, it's so exciting, John. This is
Yeah.
amazing because us real estate investors, we miss this because we're going out the Census Bureau. Um, but Harvard has had studies out, and then other groups like credit unions measure this. They're not so interested in financial household, right? If you've got a daughter who's in college, she doesn't live with you, but she's considered by the Census Bureau part of your house.
Right.
So in 2003, this never ever happened before. More people living alone than ever before. So there's a lot of things to blame the housing shortage on, but when you take current inventory and now instead of, a 3-bedroom apartment that having 2, 3 people in it, it has 1, or a 5-bedroom house has 1 or 2. So
Yeah.
this became huge, and it's probably reason why, last year our Surgeon General released that we have an epidemic of loneliness. It's the
Yeah.
equivalent of smoking 15 cigarettes a day. My first company when I opened it in 2017 was called Community Living Homes, because that's my best name for it. Back then, co-living meant like a hostel,
Yeah. Yeah.
like short-term Airbnb house. But this is what's amazing is the solution to this is not who is allowed into the house. We background checks, and we do house tours, right? So, the solution to this is a healthy household. So we have a 40-point complete household system. It's part of the property management company. And by the way, if anybody's wondering, I don't manage any of my properties. I don't know the renters. This is, completely reproducible. It's all about systems. But what they do is they set up a healthy household. The definition of a healthy household is one that anybody who's reasonable and responsible can fit in that household. If they're a massive introvert, if they're a college professor, if they're an HVAC technician, if there's somebody retired, if they're fill in the blank, they will fit if they're reasonable and responsible, because a household is for everybody, And so what's super, super cool is pretty much the property management company is going to do all of the things that the people in the house, like fix a toilet. But the people in the house are going to mow the yard. People want to live in and have that ownership experience. So they also don't want to, like for instance, the intentional living community that I've been in, they're going to have a 3-hour meeting every Monday. And then if somebody wants to join the house, like when I joined the house, I had to meet with every single person, and then they had to talk about it, and then blah, blah, blah. But normal people in the co-living world, what they want to do is they want to trust the property manager to put people who are good in there. And then they have some household systems that if somebody slips in that sucks, or, right, somebody comes upon a bad experience in their life and a good renter turns into a bad one, they can remove somebody. And so even the property manager doesn't have to worry. They do their role and the household does its role. And so this is the big thing why in COVID, these companies were failing left and right, where companies like mine or who practice like mine, we had massive waiting lists because people in COVID realized my biggest wealth is the people I live with.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think it's important. We've talked about so many reasons why it works, and I think it goes back to a traditional, maybe not traditional, more of a non-traditional, but an older way of living where community was kind of the heart of it. Now we're looking at cities that are so spread out, you can't walk anywhere. And it's why, as we were saying before, the collaborative nature of intentional living and co-living, that's why people are more likely to create their own gardens and share in the tours